so beautiful, Lightbeam. I have given you a little bit of an introduction to my guest this week, who is Joan Nadzielski, psychic medium and women's circle facilitator, and so much more, as you will hear in this episode. But for now, welcome, Joan.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
I am so delighted that you found time amidst the chaos of the season, which by the time when you're listening or watching this, it will be well and truly over. But we are in that chaos. And so I'm really grateful that you made the time. Joe, like I said, I've given you a little bit of an intro, but I would love for you to fill in the gaps and just take us on a bit of a journey of like, how did you get to be a psychic, a medium, and communicator with horses?
So my story, I suppose, begins like everyone's, coming into this world and being instilled with the values and perspectives of the world of your parents, and then those of uh, the school and society, and all those things were very much instilled in me growing up. So I was raised in a Catholic family. I went to a Christian school, was going to church every Sunday. I I felt growing up that there were instances where obscure things would happen, but I thought they were normal. And by the time that I would discuss them with people and realize they weren't normal, then you kind of start questioning what's happened and how it's happened. So, one of the biggest ones for me was deja vu. I would have dreams about things, and those dreams would actually play out down the track, like, what do you call it in movies? Like scene for scene.
Mhm.
And
So
from
you actually
there,
remembered the dreams, because often when we have deja vu, we don't know where we know it from, but you actually had a dream,
yeah, it was
remembered.
like an epiphany,
Lovely.
really.
Yeah,
Like it was exactly like what
premonitions.
would happen in my dream. And the bizarre thing about my dream was nearly every time in the dream, something bad would happen. And so I knew I had to change something. I had to change something in the dialogue or in like what was happening, because otherwise it would play out as per my dream. So it was like I was given the chance to interfere. And it was just so bizarre because and it wasn't even like a mild replication of the dream. It was exactly like the dream. I just cannot explain that. And anytime that I've tried to explain to people that would happen, they just thought I was mad. Like you can't see the future. And
Can I
because of,
jump in? Can I jump in? Because I will forget, and I really am dying to know, Joe. So when you say you were given sort of like this chance to change something, um, did you know, like, when that dream finished and you woke up, was there a moment where you thought, okay, this is the aspect I need to change? Or did you just kind of learn it over time when things went bad and you, oh, wow, I was given a warning?
see, I wouldn't have realized that that would have been like like an epiphany, if we can call it that today. I wouldn't have known that that was an epiphany because like kids are dreaming all the time. Like I did have nightmares about dinosaurs around my parents' house and things like that from watching too much Land Before Time. So the discernment was tricky because it's like not knowing that that circumstance was actually going to play out. So I wouldn't know until it would start happening, and I'd be like, "Oh my goodness, I've had this in a dream before." So it's not like I was able to prepare for it. It would just start happening, and I'd quickly recall I've had this dream before. So it was all very much in the moment.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. I just, yeah, wanted to know the process, because that fascinates me. The leeway that you would get. Sorry, continue.
No, 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 that's fine. And like I said, I went to like raised Catholic, so obviously psychics, clairvoyants, mediums, all of that is very much don't go near it. It's taboo. and going to a Christian school as well. That kind of went hand in hand with the that Catholic upbringing. So I guess all of that kind of thing I suppressed, and I was always very afraid of the dark. I just feel like particularly I grew up on a farm, and if I was going to feed the cattle dog, I'd have to walk home in the dark, and I would always feel something behind me. And obviously, when we are in the dark, our other senses activate when our sight is lessened. So that sense that we're not kind of told is there, that intuition or that feeling of someone else with us, we're always kind of told that we're mad and there's nothing there and there's nothing in the dark.
Or
There's nothing under
paranoid.
your bed.
Mm.
Yeah, all that kind of thing. But I very much felt it, and I still to this day, um, I'm not afraid of the dark as much as what I used to, but um, I'm still hesitant to go outside, to go lock up our dog or things like that. I asked my husband to go do that. Not that I'm scared of anything. I'm not scared of the spirit world or anything. I think that fear and anxiety as a child is still, it's almost like I'm somewhat traumatized by it.
When I actually, oh my gosh, I don't usually interrupt my guests like this. I actually let them finish their life story. But Joe, oh my gosh, I am so familiar with this fear. And I know amongst my listeners, there's going to be people there who will be familiar with that. Um, the fear, because see, for me, I wasn't scared that I will get mugged or, there's bad people out there and someone's going to, do something. I just had this feeling like there's some presence around me or someone, and that fear was interesting because when I started doing my work, they said you have to surrender this fear because I was really wanting to, like when you're told you're psychic or you're clairvoyant, immediately in your head, you're like, oh yeah, spirit's going to come. As I always say to my friends, like Patrick Swayze, ghost appears, talks to you in full sentences, right? And that was my aspiration when I started. But spirit, being spirit, very smart, a guide said you have to just surrender that fear, and they showed me conscious fear and then subconscious fear. The conscious fear, you can just decide, okay, I've got nothing to be scared of. But the subconscious fear, they've cleared for me in over 2 nights. Now, this isn't about me, so we don't need to, delve into that. I would love to hear more from you, but I just wanted to say, oh my God, I know what that is like. And it's that fear, like you said, when your physical senses, when you surrender them, when they're suspended, all the other senses, the soul senses, the intuitive, psychic, whatever we want to call them, heightened. And it's meant to be like that, right? It's just easier at nighttime because there's less noise, less distractions, physical distractions, so you're able to maybe pick up on them easier. Anyway,
Once all those things that distract your human step out of the way, like you said, sight, noise, everything calms down at night. And perhaps that's why owls are up all night. They're incredible, they're known for their wisdom and they're up all night. I wonder if there's some kind of, reason for that. Um, so yeah, very much so. So I certainly felt that, and there's still, my human still gets a bit worried about being outside at night if it's pitch black, and I don't know why, but that's how it is for me at the
I would
moment.
say it's sensory overload actually of your psychic senses. I feel like
Yeah,
that's
I would
maybe
say
what
so
it
too.
is. You're like,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because I am very careful, and we can get into this later, just about when I'm switching things on and switching things off. Because like when I'm working, I try to work, and when I'm not, and I feel like if that switches me on, I kind of go, I don't want to switch it on at the moment, so I avoid that. I'm like to my husband, you go lock up the dog. Um, so going through school. Uh, Going through school, Christian school, so didn't have anything to do with it. It was very much, we'd do devotion every day and read the Bible and all that kind of thing. So I had an awareness of being something greater out there. So I wasn't an atheist. I didn't believe that there was nothing out there for us. I did have a sense of uh, this knowingness of there being something greater, and that when we die, we don't just go to nothing. Like that was something that I just couldn't, like when I'd have discussions with people that didn't have a Christian or Catholic background, that's just something I couldn't accept, that when we die, that's it. And so I finished school, went to uni, met my husband, um, and his mother was incredibly, I would say she was quite intuitive. She had a lot going on with her body in terms of ailments and things like that. Um, and she ended up passing away very quickly. So she was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, and then 6 months later, she passed away. So we knew that we were going to lose her. We just didn't know how quickly that process was going to take. But it did allow me to have time with her to discuss about what happens after this world. And she loved watching shows like Medium. She would go to clairvoyance and she would share all of this with me, even though I was hesitant myself. I was like, I could never go do that myself, but I love to hear about it. And that was almost, that fear of heaven and hell. Like if I went to a clairvoyant, I was doomed to go to hell, was kind of what was instilled in me with my upbringing. So we had a chat about um, what happens when we pass, and she said, "Look, I don't know what I'll be, but I might be a feather, or I might be this or that." And she goes, "But you'll know. You'll just know." And I just given birth to our first son, so he was born about 12 or 13 days before she passed. And just after her passing, it was the day after the funeral, so everything had kind of settled down. Like there was a lot going on. Like we were figuring out how to be new parents, trying to help with photos and things and organizing the funeral, trying to be as supportive to other members of my husband's family as we could at that time, while trying to, like I said, trying to figure out how this parenthood thing works and how to take care of a baby. And I was waiting for the maternal health nurse to come, and she was due in about 15 minutes. So at about 12 o'clock, I think it was, and our doorbell rang at 11:45. And it's not unusual for the doorbell to go off, run one ring short of a normal ring, which I know sounds really bizarre, but I never thought anything of it. And I just thought it was weird, but I always knew if it was one ring short, there was never anyone at the door. So I'm not sure whether that was another loved one in spirit that was playing with the doorbell before she passed. But this particular day, the doorbell went, but it stopped 2 rings short, which had never happened before. And I went to the door and I opened the door and I just felt, and the only way I can describe it is I just felt energy move through the door. I just felt a presence move through the door. And I was just like, "Hi, Jen." I just knew that that was her.
Wow.
And it was just so comforting, yet it felt incredibly selfish to have that experience because it wasn't my mum that had passed. It was my husband's mum, and she was obviously very close with her family, but she obviously knew that I was open to receiving the message that she'd arrived safely and that kind of thing, or that I would feel that. And so I've always felt quite guilty for having that experience. Um, and the other aspect of that story is my husband was actually walking the dog at that time. And before I told him what had happened, I asked him, I said, "Oh, did you see a feather on your walk?" And I know feathers like universal symbol for like loved ones in spirit. It's quite common. But at that stage, the tiniest symbol would have kind of been enough, given that I just started out, kind of accepting that there was something more than what we could see, and that there was more to where we go when we pass. And he had to think about it, and he was like, oh, actually, Buddy, so our dog, stopped to sniff a feather, which, for my husband to kind of recall that that actually happened, and that happened in the same, whether it happened in the same moment but it happened within the same 30 minutes of this doorbell. So
So
that
you
was
just
all.
said to him, you just asked him about the feather, prompted, or, somehow it came to you and you asked him, and he had that experience in a similar same period as you had the experience of the doorbell and
Yeah,
his
and I'm
mom
not
coming
even sure
through.
why I asked him about the feather. I'm not
Wow.
sure. I can't remember whether it's just because she said, I'm not sure whether I'll be a feather or I'll be this, I'll be that. But I specifically said, did you see a feather? Like I didn't say coin. I didn't say, like there's so many other symbols I could have said butterfly, but it was feather.
You placed it, or she placed it in your mind. That is it. And so you said it. It came out.
Yeah, exactly. And that is absolutely like the intelligence of spirit and how they can work through us. And some people will just be so adamant that that is a coincidence. But when it is accompanied by like a knowingness or a feeling of like that supports it, that it makes it evokes something in you, there's more to it. You've got to be careful, obviously, uh, with symbols. If you take everything you see as a symbol, nothing becomes a symbol anymore. The you take everything as a sign, but that was very much accompanied with a feeling and a knowingness, and like I said, that feeling of the energy coming into the house. So from there, I um, I felt very connected to her. I didn't feel like her energy had left the world. Like I just didn't get this feeling that she'd gone far. Like I felt like she was still very much close to us. I knew that she'd passed, obviously, like that we didn't have access to her physical body anymore or to see her, but I was just like, there's something going on here. Like I still feel that her presence hasn't left. Like, and I just couldn't explain it. And again, it felt very selfish to feel this way. And it was very hard to talk to my husband, which I don't think I even did at the time. Or perhaps I did, I can't remember now. Because, like I said, it wasn't my mother. And perhaps I'd feel very differently if it was my mother. But it felt selfish to feel that comfort that came with it. So I made a booking for my husband to go to the clairvoyant that his mum would always go to because I could never go. At that point in time, I was still very much, goes against everything I was raised to believe. I can't go to one. I don't know what will happen.
It's interesting because
Um,
she's clearly seeking you out because you must be that brighter light, easier to access. And yet you as a human are fighting this turmoil, this inner battle. That is fascinating.
yeah, totally. So it was very much my spirit and my human having this, like you said, like this battle, whereas the spirit saying, leading me in a direction, my human's going, like putting the brakes on.
But it doesn't
So
make sense.
no, so I've made this booking with this lady, and her waiting list was 18 months at the time. So between my husband going to that, I bought tickets to go see John Edward. So I figured that was okay because he wouldn't specifically be reading for me. I've got some loved ones in spirit, but not anyone that was super close that I thought would come through. Um, and I just thought that was a safer bet than just going to a medium, or a psychic one-on-one. So we went to that together. So me, my husband, and my father-in-law all went to that experience, which was phenomenal. And I really enjoyed watching John work, but I was still in the room very much as a skeptic. Like you're always sitting there thinking, did he plant people in the audience? Um, you know, did was what he said really generic and this kind of thing? But the more that you kind of sat through the evening, and it's the feeling that you have when these interactions are happening, and being in that moment feels differently. So when you go to like debrief, which is what we did afterwards, we went and got a coffee and tried to like debrief and figure it all out. But it just it feels different in the moment. And
Because
it's
you know it's the
because that
truth.
connection is happening.
Yes. It's
And
like
that,
when you
and
can spot someone who is all smokes and mirrors and there's no substance, whether it's a car salesman that's a bit dodgy or a psychic, you know when you're being shown something other than the truth. And I feel like that's why maybe you felt that, wow, as the evening, it's always like spirit saying surrender.
yeah. Well, I feel like that was constantly kind of a theme. It was like, constantly trying to get me to surrender and almost like yeah, just pulling me along gently as much as my human could kind of bear and allowing the humanness of me to step back more and more as time went on. Um, so my husband then had the appointment with the clairvoyant, and the things that she was able to bring through for him were phenomenal. Like we hadn't told anyone. So literally days before, we decided that we were going to put a pool in, and so no one would have known. We hadn't told anyone. We hadn't told family or friends. Like, no, there's no way this woman could have known we were going to put a pool in. And the first thing she said to my husband was, "Your mum's happy about the pool." And so he was like, that was just something that Spirit was able to bring through, that he was like, there is no way that she could have known that. And so that kind of opened him up for the rest of the reading to be able to receive the
I've got
messages from his
goosebumps.
mum.
Oh,
Yeah, it's just phenomenal. And so she brought through so many things about, I was pregnant at that time with my daughter. She told us what we were having, and just predicted just so much stuff. Like she said, there's two big trucks around your house, which was amazing because we were having a heap of landscaping done at that time, and the landscapers have got two big trucks that were parked out the front of our house for like 4 weeks, which it was
such
just stuff that
detail.
she couldn't have made up. Like it was just out of control. And so that blew both our minds. And from there, I booked another appointment. So my husband took that appointment. I booked another appointment, and the intention was not for me to go. It was for my father-in-law to go. I said, look, I'll book an appointment for him. It's an 18-month wait. Once it comes up, if he doesn't want to go, you know,
Someone
we'll
will.
figure it out at the time. So in that time, um, I had so I had two children, just recounting everything because everything was kind of happening at once. And I'd just been gifted this amazing, beautiful horse, which the universe put in my path, and I'm still so incredibly grateful. And I'd had horses my whole life, and um, for some reason, the two most recent horses that I've owned, I've not purchased. They were given to me, and they were both very special in their own right. And this lad I was incredibly close to, and I had this very close bond with him. And horses are very, very intuitive, spiritual, very connected animals. And I grew up with horses, and we're always told that they're very sensitive. They can pick up on your emotions, and I don't think it's just that they can they're looking at you and they can smell fear and all this kind of thing. It's so much deeper than that. It's very intuitive. It's that thing that we can't see, and they can tap into us just as I've now learned to tap into them. And I think that's why they are just so incredibly sensitive. Um, and this particular chap, he was overly sensitive. He was very nervous, hadn't had the attention that a lot of other horses had had. And so I built this really beautiful relationship with him. And I'd only had him for 2.5 years, and then I lost him very suddenly through just freak circumstances. And this appointment with this lady came up. It was before he passed, actually. It was before he passed, and we were going through lockdown here in Victoria. So that appointment came up, and it was around Valentine's Day. And I'm not sure if you recall, because you're from Victoria as well. There was a lockdown that was like a snap lockdown for 5 days, and Valentine's Day was in the middle of
We were
it.
right in Melbourne for that. Yep.
Yeah, so I think it was the day before Valentine's Day. I was meant to have this appointment with this clairvoyant. That's when it was. My father-in-law didn't want it, so I thought, oh, I'll go. And just to make sure I'm getting my events in in order. So my horse hadn't passed yet. But that appointment couldn't happen because it was face to face and we were in lockdown, so it got postponed. Uh,
Wow.
so and obviously there'd been an 18-month wait for that appointment, and I
I
was like,
know.
this is God. I'm not meant to be going. That's it. I'm not meant to be having this appointment. And I going on in throughout that year, I fell pregnant with my third child, and unfortunately, I lost my horse in June. He passed away, and I think that was the catalyst for me seeking out that appointment again. So I contacted that clairvoyant out of the blue and just said, "Look, I was meant to have an appointment with you back in February, and we had to cancel, and we didn't really reschedule." So she booked in an appointment, and it was online, so it was via Zoom, and I was very, what's the word? I was still very much a skeptic. I was like, I'm going to go in. I'm not going to give her anything. Like, I'm not going to give her any kind of uh, like extravagant
Signs of
feedback. Like,
giveaways.
yeah, I'm not going to give anything
Yeah.
away.
Go in there
And
and
so,
close off your energy.
yeah, because I just didn't know whether this person was legit or whether they were just, going to feed off my answers. And at this point, like that door was still, it was only cracked open the tiniest little bit. So I went to her, and she brought through my mother-in-law really strongly. And I was just like bawling my eyes out for the whole reading. And I've still got my notes from it somewhere. And my horse didn't come through in that reading. And not that I thought he would come through, because I wasn't convinced yet that, animals go to heaven. So, but one of the answers I did seek was what happened to him. It was a particular medication that he was given, or it wasn't really, I wouldn't say medication, but it was something to a preventative. But why actually it caused him to die. And so then I had another medium, and I'm not even sure how I came across this medium. Like, someone else must have posted about him or had a reading with him and shared him, and I was following him on Instagram. And so I thought, I'm going to book a reading with him, and that was Sean Collins. And so I had a reading with him, I think maybe 4 weeks after I booked in with him. And he brought through my horse and gave me kind of the closure and the healing and everything I needed to hear. And there was so much about what he said and that he predicted for my future that felt so foreign. Like, there were things that he said about our house earning us money, like the house we lived in. He said, in 4 months' time, that's going to earn you some money. And we were like, what?
Wow.
Like, and I spoke to my husband about this. I was like, what does that mean? Our house is going to earn us money. Like, are we just going to sell it for a profit? Or, how in the next 4 months is it going to make us money? And as it turns out, we ended up offering our house as an Airbnb. And so it started generating money for us, and
Oh my
and
God.
quite, yeah, and it was just, and then I went back through my notes, like after we'd been Airbnb the house for a few months, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, and it was the exact month that it started, and when the money started coming in, I was just like, that is unreal. Like, this is where
Oh,
things started
definitely.
to fall into place. Like, there's something more to this, and so I saw that Sean was offering a 5D mediumship course, and it was to kind of understand this kind of work better. Well, that was my perception of it. It was just to get an understanding of how it happens. And I just wanted to understand how people connect in. I was like, there's
How are
obviously
they able
something.
to bring that through? Yeah, the predictions and loved ones.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's again me off trying to seek answers. And I did that course. It was an investment. So, and my husband was incredibly supportive. So I'm so lucky. But that I did that course, and I think it was 12 weeks. Like, it was a 3 month course, and it was, um, I think, I had to do, I don't know, maybe 4 hours a week. So between the coursework and meditation and I guess the tutoring from Sean. And by the end of it, I could do it. I could connect in. And I remember the very first connection I made in class. So we were practicing on each other doing readings, and the very first thing I brought through for someone was that this girl that was coming through, she had a walking, like she was showing me this walking stick, but it didn't fit this girl given her age and her personality, and it just didn't suit her. And I remember how I was shown this stick, because I was first shown it as a stick, and then the imagery evolved for me seeing as the walking stick. And it completely resonated for this girl with one of her colleagues at work who had a walking stick who ended up passing away because she had, I can't remember what it was, but she had something where she needed to have a walking stick. But it was humorous, like there was some kind of humor around it, and I can't remember it why, and I don't want to go into it too much because I don't want to be insensitive. Uh,
You brought
but I
that
just
through.
remember that coming through and thinking, oh my goodness, like that information didn't belong to me. Like, how did that come into my mental space for me to be able to talk to this girl about? And so by the end of the 12 weeks, I was offering readings myself, and it's just evolved from there. It's just like that course blew the door open for me big time. And that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
Ah,
It's just constant development and trying to do the work and working on myself. And it's just, that phrase of being a forever student, just constantly learning, but at the same time trying to look within for the learning and the answers as opposed to always looking outwards. So many people are looking for the next course as opposed to reflecting and going inward and just kind of sitting with their own energy to see where things are going. Um, so that's, yeah,
wow.
it's, you're
Joy, what
right.
a journey. What a journey, because so many things like just came together but at the same time, and so many events that happened, to bring you to this point. Catholicism, I mean, that would have been a big, huge block. Very familiar with that, totally familiar, and the fear around it, and that sort of I'm doing something wrong. So when you took the 3 month course, did that also help you get past the conditioning from your upbringing as a Catholic girl, or did you do anything in addition? Because like I know that when we work with spirit, it blows you right open. There's like it shows you exactly where your fears, your edges are, and almost makes you look at them and do something with them. What was your
I feel
experience?
like there was so much happening at this time that this all happened. So with COVID, we were locked in our houses. And so for me, it really allowed me to quieten down the noise of the world. So we made a point of turning off the TV and stopped listening to the reports from the government every day that were scheduled at like 10, 11 o'clock every day. And we really stepped away from all like the fear and like it really like took its toll on people, and you could tell who had invested in that constant instilling of fear into people, and the people that had stepped away from it to kind of decipher what they thought was real and what wasn't. And look, we could debate all day about what we think is real and not real, but I think people need to be really true to what they felt in their heart. And I bring that up not to be controversial, but I bring it up um, to to help people realize that when we step away from all the noise in the world, that's when the real clarity comes through. And so with COVID, because we were able to step away from that, particularly being in the country, made it easier. I'm not saying, um, I think for people in inner city Melbourne would have suffered a lot more than what we did because we had a lot more freedom in the country. But we were able to still go out and spend a lot of time in nature, and our freedom wasn't as restricted. But it really allowed us to switch off the noise, and I kind of really was able to, what's the word? Come back to myself and just what felt different. And I didn't even know that I was doing that. That was just the
And I
circumstances of the world created that at that time.
and I think, I mean, I was in Melbourne. We were in Melbourne during, those lockdowns still. And I think it's what you said, Joe, that stepping away from the noise and choosing what you will allow to come into your energy and what you will not engage with or not do, it really helped. I think, and you're right, you could tell who was very vested and maybe in fear or scared and who wasn't. And my perspective is from being in, the metropolitan area where we were in those lockdowns, right? But what an opportunity for you to deal with that, what was coming up, but also your fears or your blocks around, how you were brought up, the belief that you were brought up, and then now opening yourself up to there must be more.
Yeah, and that's totally what it was. There must be more. And it was just questioning absolutely everything from there. Like not only being from a Catholic background, but schooling and just everything from that point onwards was it's so easily accepted because from when we're brought up, it's just like this is how the world works, okay? And now I see it so differently. And one thing in particular was my relationship with money. So I come from, I would say, a background of being incredibly frugal. So and look, I guess being from families that lived through the war and then being immigrants into a country and having essentially nothing, trying to have something was a big deal. And wasting and or like wasting food or resources was really frowned upon and really made a big deal of. And so that at the same time, which is so funny being raised Catholic, because that feeling of being frugal and having to fight for every dollar and that kind of thing doesn't really go hand in hand with saying grace at dinner time and being
And
grateful for what you
compassion
do
is,
have.
yeah.
Yeah, so and I had not even had that realization till just now that those two just don't gel in terms of now what I know in terms of frequency and aligning with, you know, with our highest timeline and bringing in abundance. They just don't work together, those two frequencies. Um,
Isn't it
one,
interesting how when you step away, it's like this veil lifts and you're like, oh my God, this doesn't make sense. Or they're saying this, but doing this. And like, how can this coexist together?
yeah, it's almost like you step back and you see the bigger picture. Is probably the best way to describe it. You just kind of step back a little bit, and I feel like that's just what happened then about me talking about grace and being frugal. It's when you step back and you go, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. For me, it was the
And
lost babies. For me, it was the lost
uh,
babies and how when a child is born, um, and dies at any point before it's christened. We were actually on holidays in Poland visiting my aunt, and so they live in a smaller town. And she took us to the cemetery, and there were these broken tombstones near like the bins and near the fence. And she said those are the babies that were born, but when christened, and so therefore the priest refused to bury them, where their family is. And for me, that was like, hang on a minute. So we have a God that creates these perfect, it never makes mistakes, but made a mistake here, but then actually it's not his fault. It's, you know, this baby died. It wasn't a baby. The baby is innocent, right? Like the baby died, and because it wasn't christened, so God cares about the christening, but also creates these imperfect bodies. Like, and for me, that started, like, what's happening? Like, why is this happening? Oh, and then she said, but if you know the priest and you slip him a little bit extra, he will bury the baby. And I was like, oh. For me, just have you heard of this? Like in
I've never heard of this. I'm not
yeah,
sure, like I've never heard of it in Australia, but that just
could be a Polish
and
thing.
I just that the feeling that gives me is just what a horrible, and this kind of goes hand in hand with my work in terms of ethics, right? What a horrible feeling to leave a family. They've just lost their baby, but also to make them feel the guilt and the shame that their baby wasn't worthy of this earth because, they weren't christened in time or that they weren't fit for this earth. And that's why they passed. Like, what?
So I had
Horrible. And I'm
that.
pregnant. I'm pregnant at the moment, and so I'm quite sensitive to all baby stuff at the moment. So this
Yeah.
is pregnancy number 4.
Oh.
And I just feel like they've just gone through the most horrific circumstances. To add that on top, and just even the shame and the guilt for them to be in a different part of the cemetery or have their tombstones broken or whatever it is just mortifying. And how does that come from a place of love, which is what the church is meant to be built upon?
Which is why it didn't agree with me, like how the church was presenting God. And I'm like, but my growing up, my feelings around God were different. And I didn't have an idea of guides or anything when I was 10, but I spoke to God because that's what we were learning at school. Except I don't, whenever I talk to God or ask him, to help me, I never felt the vengeance that the church, or shame or guilt because I stayed up too late as a kid. I always felt love. I always felt like everything's going to be okay. So I could feel the love, but in my head, that picture didn't kind of work with how God was presented. And so when I heard this about the babies, I'm like, okay, so now I'm even more puzzled. How can this loving, caring God allow for this, like this poor family to go through this and, like you said, be shamed and guilted in the end. So anyway, so that was for me the catalyst. I kind of go like, no, my picture of God is separate, so there's some sort of disconnection, so I can't be part of this anymore because it's different. It doesn't work that way for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and that made me question everything, like the Bible and just all every like some of it feels right, you know. Some of it feels right, like the concept of love and us being part of something bigger. That all feels right, but then it feels like something's gone amiss along the way. It feels like either the stories have been interpreted for somebody's personal gain, or it just feels like something has gone amiss along the way. So, and I had a discussion with my mum. I haven't told my parents what I do because no good will come from me saying, hey, I do this thing now that you told me my whole life not to do, because it would be, it would always bring shame upon the family, I would feel. And because there's no beauty or there's no good that would come of me telling them, I haven't. So, but I am very sure that they will come when they move on to the spirit world. I'm sure that they will come and visit me very quickly. But um, I did say to my mum at one point, because we were talking about the church and everything during lockdowns, and there was very much a divide between who was allowed in the church and who wasn't. And so that was a
Wow.
separation of people. And uh, I was trying to explain to my mum that I don't have any respect for the church anymore. And just there was so much contradictory behavior, particularly at that time. And my mum was like, "Oh, the church has helped us through so much." And I was like, "Was it the church or is it the people or the community that makes up the church?" And that was a pretty, I don't think that's something that my mum wanted to hear,
Explore.
that their child, that their child, that they're, I'm one of eight, so maybe one out of eight's not too bad going AWOL. But I'm sure it wasn't something that she specifically would have liked to have heard from me, even saying that I don't believe in the church. But I did say, I said, I believe in God or a divine, or that we are part of something much bigger. I just don't believe in the church. I just
And
have no faith in
that's
the church.
the way you've put it. I just realized there was a lot of division. Like that's what, and I can only speak for Catholicism, maybe even Polish in particular, because maybe there's differences again how it's done. But there was a lot of there was division. There was between like who can speak directly to God, who has to speak through. You know, you're at the bottom, because you're a sinner, even as a 10-year-old who watches too much TV and you know doesn't listen to parents, normal stuff, but you're a sinner, so you're down here, as opposed to people who, if you put more money into the basket than someone, you're up here, and then the church, again, who it gets to go in, who doesn't. To me, there was always this separation, and that's not what I was feeling God is. It's about love, and it's about coming together, and I think, like you said, that's probably what your mom is feeling and loving, that energy that everyone brings into this space, even if it's under the pretense of believing into, it's the priest that puts on the show or whatever, the big idea, but they come with this pure intention into this space. They infuse this space. So they, of course, we know what happens in a group session, right? Like when there's a spark, that spark pulls up everyone. So that is actually the magic, that is the miracle, like you said, right? But I love that we touched on that, actually, because that was a huge thing for me as well, the Catholicism and the idea of God, because I think that can stand in a way of us connecting, and not everyone wants to be a psychic or medium, but we all have the ability to tap into our intuitive abilities, and that is something that was discouraged to keep us down here, because then you just get the watered down, manipulated version of what the Bible or what God really is about.
Yeah, and it's definitely, there's a hierarchy. There's a hierarchy in the church. And when you look at us all, and there's a hierarchy even with the people that attend church, like you said, the people that could put more money into the church and be a bigger part of it, and the people that were just kind of struggling to get by and just needed something to believe in that was bigger than themselves. And as opposed to coming back to the fact that we are all this pure source of light, like we are all at our essence this pure energy.
Do we not see it the
But
most with babies?
yeah, that's absolutely right. They've just got no judgment, no
Yeah,
judgment.
that's why everyone
And
loves
they're
them.
so forgiving. Like they're so incredibly forgiving. And it's just so obscure that there's this hierarchy, and yet it's all the human traits, or of either jealousy or control, or all of those things that seem to pay into the hierarchy, if that makes
Yeah,
sense, as opposed to being,
absolutely.
we're actually all equal here. No one
Yeah,
is superior. Like it shouldn't just be the priest is able to speak to God. It's we are all here on level, but it feels like it's some form of suppression.
it is, because, and this is coming still from the dark ages, because it's easier to manipulate and control and make you feel, so, I've experienced spirits who have crossed over, who are Catholics, and they're scared to go to the light because of where they might end up going, where they thought they were taught, as children, about hell and stuff. And so they're actually have that fear, that hesitation of going into, and crossing over. Um, which brings me to your skills and your amazing work, Joe. Tell me your experience with them. How do you experience them? How do they come in? You said you have boundaries. Let's talk about this. Let's go, because I would really love to know how you are the medium between spirit world and physical.
So I must admit, I've by doing this work, it has given me so much comfort because, like you just said, I used to have so much fear about dying. I used to have like, I know there's something, but what if it is hell? Like, what if I haven't been good enough? Like, where's the benchmark for knowing whether I've been good enough to go to heaven? Like, who's got the scorecard and how do I,
Well,
you know,
apparently,
ha
according to the church, the God has, right?
yeah, that's
Keeps the
right. But
tally.
you just don't know where 50% is of, you know, or how you're going to get to one area or the other. But having done this work now, I do not fear death at all. I used to, like I said, I used to, but now I just know that there's something more to it. And I know um, that I have elected to come here to 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 evolve or for my soul to evolve or to do some kind of task, if you will. Um, and if that's cut short or whatever, I just know that my soul is here for a purpose and I'm just here trying to figure it out. And so doing my work, so by trade, I'm by career, I guess, I'm a forensic accountant. So it's very muggle and very,
Very left brain.
yeah. And so bringing in this work, I just, oh, the contrast is just so out of this world in terms of being so in my head, doing accounting type work, logic driven, to doing what feels like healing, bringing people comfort. And by doing some of the work myself, so just by being a psychic medium doesn't mean that I just do it all the time and it's just always there, which it is, but I'm also doing the work myself. So I'm working on myself. I'm trying to evolve. I'm trying to get different information come through. I'm trying to um, get clearer on me, my soul's purpose, and connecting with myself. And through that, I guess every there's no time wasted with spirit. Like there is no time wasted. So any kind of interaction or learning that I can do is not wasted, but keeping in mind that a lot of the learning and development comes from sitting with yourself and strengthening your own abilities on your own time. But this world has taught us that we need to seek everything externally, all our validation, and if we want to progress and all of that kind of thing, we have to go and look for it out of ourselves. Whereas this type of work forces us to go inward. And it's, for me, I would say it's probably the highest in terms of discipline. Like you have to be so disciplined if you want to, if you really want to go and just blow this world apart with your abilities, it takes a lot of discipline. Like you can look at the monks and people that practice their whole lives and meditate for hours in a day.
But excuse me,
Um,
these monks don't have three children and one more on the way. So how does a busy mom of four babies, you know, a dog, possibly a big property with horses, which all need your love and care. Um, how do you find the time to go then? How does that happen for you, Joe?
well, that you're absolutely right. I don't have time. I don't have hours in a day to go meditate. I'm lucky to get 5 minutes to myself, but it's finding other ways to quieten down the world. So, look, I've had instances where I've been, felt like I've been hooked on my phone or, um, that I've been so caught up in just drama before, which I think I've just learned to step away from what is no longer serving my highest purpose. So, and one of the biggest things, particularly with social media, is just unfollowing accounts that just don't serve me, that don't light me up or inspire me or want me to be going out and doing the best I can in this life. Um, but in terms of time, it's kind of being present is just one of the biggest things. Being in the moment. Um, like if one of the kids asked me to come and color with them, I go color with them, as opposed to I'm too busy, I'm too busy, I'm too busy. Um, because at the end of the day, I'm instilling that into them as well. So I've got to be really careful about towing the line between, yes, getting the washing done, but also making time to be present with them and helping them connect in with themselves. Um, I love gardening. Gardening's in connecting with the earth. That's a big one for me. Uh, and it's just, I don't have horses or a property at the moment. It's on the cards, and I can get to a story about this shortly. An experience I had last weekend. But that I know that horses will come back into my life in a physical form at some point, but I'm just waiting because I just know with three young children and one on the way, it's just not the right time.
No, no, I can see that. I mean, I understand that. I mean, I have three. We don't have horses. We've got one little chihuahua, and it's pretty crazy as it is. And you're about to welcome baby number four. So that is
Yeah.
crazy. That is a
So
good point though with the sorry.
no, that's okay. I was just gonna say I do take time out when I can. So I recently went to like a women's festival. It was a 4-day festival, but I just went for a day, and that allowed me to really kind of sit in my power for the day and do sound healing. And I guess it's making a point of scheduling that kind of thing in. In the area I live in, there's not a great deal that around here, so I do facilitate women's circles when I can. Um, and I love to participate in sound healings. There's just not enough of them where I live at the moment.
Mhm.
But I guess it's scheduling those things in. So if you don't have the discipline to make the time yourself, schedule a time in to go do something like that. So whether it's a women's circle or sound healing, whatever kind of speaks to you or allows you half an hour or an hour to just sit with yourself is powerful.
Yeah, and being present. I love that you do that with your kids because God, kids are amazing at really how they can regenerate, recycle their energy. They could something happens, they fall over, and then 5 minutes later they're fine, they're up and running, right? And it's like
Yeah.
something bad happens and they bounce back. In that moment, it's just fantastic. I just find it's amazing, and especially doing well gardening. I it's so funny because I know that people say it's relaxing. I've never found it relaxing. All I can think about is, oh my God, what if I get a spider in my glove? What if, there's some, blah, what if I plant something and I have to kill it because it won't grow properly? So, but I love that that's one of your practices because as busy moms, busy people, we don't have to be these gurus or monks sitting and meditating or going into silent retreats, for days. Sometimes just locking yourself in the bathroom for 5 minutes and just taking nice deep breaths, right? And reminding yourself to be present, grounding yourself can be so powerful. Obviously different for you because you're doing this work, you're working with clients, so you're not just connecting for yourself, you're connecting for others. And I know every medium works a little bit different, but are you more visual? Are you more auditory? How does spirit talk to you?
So my strongest clair, I would say, is clairsentient. So feeling and sensing um the emotion, and it's a feel, like it's very much a feeling, and I can in readings get quite overwhelmed with emotion because it comes through so strong. And it's fascinating because I know that that emotion doesn't belong to me. And I would say a very close second is just a knowingness, just pieces of information get dropped in. And sometimes, um, yeah, it's more of a knowingness because then sometimes I'll see little bits and pieces, and depending on the connection, because I feel like those two come through real strong and they're the easiest for me to tap into. But if I get a really amazing connection with someone, like they're really flowing with their energy with me, then I can start getting real kind of like seeing things. It just depends on the energy exchange that I've got at the time. So,
Mm.
um, it's incredibly humbling to be able to do it. And it is so incredibly, how do I explain it? I love that I get to reconnect people with their loved ones that they think they've lost permanently and show them that they are so close and that there is just so much love from the spirit world. And it is just, it is so incredibly healing. And it doesn't make sense to me why this practice is suppressed in itself as well, or why it's got this terrible stigma uh, associated with it, because it brings so much peace to people, so much peace.
And
And
healing.
yeah, peace and healing. And what can be bad about that? And I saw someone post on Instagram, I think it was last week or the week before, and they were saying all these horrible things that were said to them about their work. So this person is a psychic medium, and he was sent all these horrible things about people, about, he needs to like repent or he's going to hell and all these horrible things. And when we connect in with spirit, spirit brings through these really beautiful messages and this really beautiful euphoric energy. Like that's what I feel. It feels euphoric, and I've got no concept of time and space when I'm working. Yeah, I'm very much vacant in my own body and in my own mind, if I can say it that way. And if spirit was so evil and so horrible, why would it bring so much peace and healing to people? Like it makes that, again, going back to what we were saying before, it makes no sense that this is so suppressed. And so it just makes you question everything that you believe in the world, really.
Yeah.
Um,
But then that would create more wholesome, healed, confident people who know they have the wisdom within them or here, and they can tap into. It's the same with the Akashic records. They would have this access. They would need to connect with God through a priest. They wouldn't, like, someone actually told me that the reason confession was man-made, invented by
I have heard
priests.
this, yes.
Yeah, priests basically in the village wanted to know who is stealing, gossip, but also who's stealing from their garden and stuff. So they, created this confession, right? And so we're so consumed, we're so vested in it. Like my life will fall apart unless I have my whatever monthly or however often you go, right? And in the meantime, you can just sit with yourself, whether it's with a rosary, whether you address God or angels or your higher self, and just say, wow, I stepped up there. That wasn't okay, and I feel terrible about it, and just surrender that to spirit. Oh my God, the love you would feel directly. And this because I feel like when I work with clients, I feel sometimes like, I wonder if they're getting it as intense as I am, because I know that feeling of love, that euphoric feeling. And like, I wonder if it's like filtered through me and they're just getting the second hand because, oh my God, this feels so amazing. Like, how would you not want to? Sometimes I'm in meditation in the morning usually, and Joe, it's so funny because I get to this beautiful state where I'm like, oh, but I'm gonna have to go now, and I just want to stay. I know I'm gonna go and get
Yes.
my kids ready for school, but it's just so
Yeah, you don't want to drop
beautiful.
out of it.
No,
You don't
and
want to drop out of
that's
it because it's like a high. It's the most natural high available. And I can totally resonate with that feeling because I've been in meditations where I may have been in like a class environment or something, and they're like, okay, come back, wiggle your feet. I'm like, no, I don't want to go back. So
Yes,
I
it's so
totally
amazing.
resonate with that. Um,
And what does spirit
but
say? You're always tapped in, you're always connected. You don't actually have to, when you realize and you learn how to hold this energy or how to tap in when you need it and just kind of turn on the tap and like, I need more of this now. Um, you don't have to take yourself into a 40 or an hour long meditation, right? It's just, this is what you do to show you the difference between the noise, the chaos, and what happens when we go within, right?
yeah, that's right. And that's not to say that'll happen straight away. It is a muscle, and we do need to develop it to be able to get those feelings. But it doesn't take long. You could be in probably your third meditation ever and just you have really dropped in and just have that amazing experience. And once you've had it once, you just like, and you know that it's available to you, um, it makes the next meditation easier because it feels good.
It's so good.
Um,
That
yeah, it's
feeling,
so good.
that feeling. I love so you mentioned Joe that you do women circles, you facilitate them. So is this around mediumship as well? Like you connect these women to their loved ones, or is it more around healing or storytelling
It's
or
more
different?
about holding space for women to reconnect with themselves. I like to think of it as simply taking an hour or 2 hours out of their week where they get to actually just sit with themselves. So generally I'll do a grounding meditation or humming or something to kind of bring people back to themselves, remind them to kind of remove all the layers that we wear. So, mum, career, daughter, all those hats that we wear and strip them off and just be, their pure soul essence in this space. So I wouldn't say that the circles I facilitate are out of this world witchy or um super woo-woo. It's simply about just holding space for women to really come back to themselves in a really kind of um just a really grounded way is how I'd like to describe it. I do like to make the space look beautiful because I feel like the women that come to these circles are worthy to sit in a beautiful space, a beautiful, calm space. It's not necessary, but I just like to create that kind of space and to give them permission to be heard is a huge one. Um, the amount of women that I've had come to circles that apologize for talking. And it's like, you've got the floor. Like, this is your time to talk. Please don't apologize for taking up space in this circle. That's what it's
Mm.
for. And that's really hard. Sometimes that can be really hard when people have been made to feel like they talk too much or they're not worth hearing. And I love being able to provide space for women to do that and for them to understand that, you know, um, perhaps the other people just aren't ready to hear them talk. They are entitled to talk. And I think that's probably one of the main themes that comes up in Circle. Um, what else do we do? So yeah, I do a grounding meditation. We do I welcome everyone to the circle, introduce everyone. And there's usually a theme of some sort. So whether it's about manifesting or removing what no longer serves us, or there's always some kind of theme that I instill into it. I generally like to work with the moon, so new moons and full moons, because of the energy around those, and particularly being a women's circle and our association with the moon or our cycles with the moon. Uh, and it's just so fulfilling because when I see women consistently attend circle, and it's not to say that you need to, just going to one whenever you can is great. But when I've seen women consistently attend, I just see their lives start to change for the better. It's amazing. And they probably don't see it, but me as a bystander, like seeing what's changing for them week for week and how their perspectives are changing and how they're standing in their own power and reclaiming their voice and putting in boundaries and whether it's the power of the circle or the power of the person, I'm not sure. Maybe it's a combination of both. It's amazing and it's so beautiful. And um, I'm so privileged to see that happen for people and watch that process of really connecting in with ourselves for 2 hours a fortnight can do to change people's lives. It is just amazing. There needs to be more women's circles.
Yeah, and oh, see where I live, we're lucky. There's a lot of spiritual sessions, whatever you need. But like you said, with the monthly or weekly, some hold those circles more frequently. Why wouldn't you want to attend? It's like maybe out of your crazy busy month, this is that one day where you can just surrender all of that, right? And just do it just for you, not with any expectation, not because you need to, but just for yourself, just to go. And I love that you said, Joe, that you are comfortable with holding the space for women who feel like nowhere else they can take up the space and speak, which, because I feel like when we don't feel heard, it builds frustration, which then comes out in anger. A lot of men, right, go usually there. I really love that you do that, and I love the mediumship. But I would love to hear about the equine readings that you do, because that's something that fascinates me as well. Everything that you do, but I have not met anyone who just does that. So could you please share how do
Of
you facilitate that?
course. So it is my favorite offering because I've grown up with horses. My parents bred and still do breed miniature ponies, and I was very much a pony club kid, and like yeah, I've been around horses my whole life and had horses of my own up until 2 years ago when I lost my most recent lad. And I've always felt connected to my horses. This might resonate for a lot of people that went through like the pony club and competition scene when they were younger, and it was very much about winning ribbons and being the best, and it kind of missed the connection with the horse. It was always about the rider. You never see the horse on the podium. It was always about the rider, and you must be such a good rider. Um, and I I just didn't love Pony Club. And I remember saying to my parents on a number of occasions, I don't want to do Pony Club. I just want to go on trail rides. That's what I want to do. And because my two sisters, one older and one younger, they went to Pony Club, mum and dad would be like, no, you go on Pony Club. We've paid your fees. You go on Pony Club. So that's what I did. But I didn't, like, I loved it. I loved going, like, flying around a cross country course over jumps and things like that. But I just liked being with my horse. And one of my favorite activities with my horses was just giving them a wash. And
Oh,
that's not it's not anything out of this world. Like it's not winning ribbons or anything. It was just giving them a wash and connecting with them and um spending time in their space. And there was something in that. So as I got older, I was a spirit by giving me the two most recent horses that I did have led me to a particular agistment property, which led me to a particular trainer. And his name is Manolo Mendez, and he's Spanish, and he is, I don't know if he'd admit it, but he's incredibly intuitive, and I feel like horses pick up on his presence and he picks up on theirs. And there's more to his training style, which is all about connection and correct posture and um his view on working with horses is very different to what I was brought up with. Um, and it was more so about feel and being able to read the horse. And so that different kind of training style kind of led me to being more patient, just being aware of the horse's energy. All these things that I wasn't really aware of at the time, but makes sense now doing the work that I do. So those incredible connections with horses over the years were beautiful, but the strongest connection was with Freddie, and he was my most recent gentleman horse gentleman that I had. And when he passed, was like I mentioned earlier, when I went to see a medium to see what had happened. And since then, and since doing the course, what I see so much in the equestrian field is people go out and they ride their horses and there's no connection. They'll jump on any horse, being like, I can ride anything and I can, I can whip any horse into shape. Uh, it doesn't sit well with me. And I just, having had this beautiful connection with Freddie, I would just like more people to have that and realize that it's not about all about ribbons and um, winning prizes and being on the podium, but that beautiful connection you have with your horse, that they trust you, that you could take them to any environment and you can trust each other to take care of each other. And that's what I felt with Freddie. Freddie, even though he wasn't handled um like he had little handling is what I'm trying to say, and he was what they call green broken, so or well, green under saddle, so he hadn't long been started, so you could ride him. And I trusted him so much that I was riding him when I was up to 20 weeks pregnant, which is actually when I lost him. But I trusted him so much, and I knew that he trusted me, even though he was a bit of a scaredy cat. But he would always look to me for guidance. We had this really beautiful connection. So with the equine readings, my hope is that I can provide another layer to the relationship that people have with their horses. And in a reading, I do them written, and they are very, they're just, it's such a sacred practice to me, because it's just so special. So I set up an altar that has a candle for each of my horses that have passed, a candle lit for each of them, and I call them in kind of to help me get a connection with whoever is requesting the reading with their horse. And when you book an equine reading with me,
I
I
love
ask
that they're
that you,
part of your guide team, your horses. It's beautiful.
yeah, they've all taught me very valuable lessons. So it's almost paying tribute and being very grateful for each and every one of them on my journey. And I ask people who book a reading to send me an item or a piece of tack, so being a saddle or a bridle or anything like that that belongs to that horse and specifically has that horse's energy. And I use that to connect in with. And I always ask that it not have the horse in the picture, because I often try to pick up the color and the looks of the
Of the
horse in the
horse.
reading as
Wow.
well. And yeah, so I set up my little altar with the candles for my horses, and I'll sit um on the floor in this room that I'm in now, and I will have the lights down really dim. And it's very different to the readings I do for psychic and mediumship. I go much deeper with this, and um yeah, I just bring through like all this information about what this horse would like their owner to know. And it could be from their living circumstances, or to pain points in their body or blockages. It could be, I've had horses come through with messages about where their owner is at and what they've picked up from their owner, which has been really interesting.
So amazing. And so then when you share this then with the person that you're reading for, do they say, oh, that makes sense? Or I was thinking, thanks for validating that. Like, do you get feedback, I guess is what I'm saying, so that you know how that
Yeah, I
went.
do. I do get feedback, because it's very hard to I have to assume all the information that drops in for me is correct
And you're
because
sending it via email, so you don't have even the person that you're reading for their energy on screen
yeah,
or
so I don't have any feedback to work off. So I have to assume everything that comes through is correct, and that's probably the best way to work with spirit. Because when you start questioning yourself or start doubting yourself, that's where the wheels tend to fall off. So you have to trust everything that comes through. But yes, I do get feedback, and it's always really beautiful. And um, for some horses, I've been able to uncover things for their owner that they haven't considered, or they've been like, yeah, there is an issue there. I just can't pinpoint pardon me, what it is. And
amazing.
or even to just validating the environment that these horses show me that they're in, uh, and who they're close to and who they like spending time with and what they kind of expect from their human as well, um, and what they enjoy. And it's a really um, it's a practice that I get so much, and I'm very humbled to be able to offer that to people.
And it sounds like such a deep and thorough reading. Um, Joe, I'm being mindful of your time. I could talk to you like with so many, yes, but sometimes, it's someone and you're like, oh my God, we could talk forever. But I'm being mindful of your time as well. But I do want to give you the opportunity to share with us anything that you wished I asked, but I didn't ask because I don't know that I need to ask this. Is there anything that you wanted to share?
Oh, let me think. It's probably not a question that I'd like you to ask or anything like that, but it's more so just for anyone listening to give them permission to go a little deeper, to seek out, whether it's a sound healing or a circle or anything that gives them a bit of time to themselves, whether it's just, like you said, 10 minutes to go just chill out in the bathroom away from the family. I think it's just giving everyone that's listening permission to make time for themselves, because I feel like we don't often, even when we're sick, we're still trying to go, 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 and not even make time for our body to speak to us about what it needs at that point. So if I can give anyone anything from today, it would be permission to make time for yourself.
That is beautiful. And I will make sure to put the links to you so that everyone can go and find you, Joe, because your Instagram account is beautiful. It is so serene. It's very much like your energy here. I feel myself just melting into my chair and just getting like, and you know what, time I have, I mean, time has flown, because we can see it, but I was like, I feel like we just started chatting. So that is definitely reflected on your Instagram, which I love. Anytime when I think your account is the kind of account anytime when you're having a bad day or something, you just go to Joe's and you can see it. It's just beautiful. Um, Joe, I've asked you at the beginning whether you would have something to share for us at the end, and you've chosen a card. So
I
please share.
did. So I have pulled a card from the Healing Waters Oracle by Rebecca Campbell, and it is the most beautiful card. There's this beautiful lady that is just really connected into her heart space and her womb space in this beautiful garden surrounded by roses and this water portal above her. And she's just completely at peace. And the card is the sacred well, replenishment, self-care, giving it from a place of plenty. And I feel like that is so fitting in terms of what I just mentioned about making time for yourself, giving from a place of plenty. And I just feel like on the back of Christmas and New Year's and all of these things that are so much energy goes into, that is, and coming into, we'll be coming into the Chinese New Year as and the
Dragon.
astrology New Year, when this episode drops. Um, that it's so important to go inward and spend time with ourselves and make sure that we're nurturing and tending to our own garden.
So beautiful. The synchronicity is just amazing. Jay, thank you so much for sharing your gifts with us, your story. That's what I love about storytelling. I mean, I know it's your life, but for us, it was just this beautiful journey and the obstacles and what you had to overcome, and you did, and that's why you are now here to be of service, I guess, for others, helping others. And I really, really appreciate you and your time. So thank you. Thank you for coming.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And if anyone wants to connect with me or wants some guidance on, their next steps or little bits and pieces like that, I'm so happy to have a chat on Instagram by DM or anything like that because if I have inspired you in any way, I'd love to hear it and I'd love to be part of
I'm sure
anyone
you,
else's journey as
yeah.
well.
I was going to ask, do you prefer in person or Zoom or like for sessions? Like if someone's not near you, can they still book in a session with you
Yeah,
via
so I do
Zoom
both
or?
in person and online. So I often do readings for people internationally as well. So America, um, predominantly. There's a few readings that come through for there. So yeah, space distance is not a boundary.
Yes, amazing, amazing. I think I had it in my head stuck that lady that did readings for your mother-in-law who would only, do them in person or, till lockdowns happened. But this is the beauty of Zoom and our understanding of, energy and spirit doesn't know space and time, really doesn't abide by these rules.
That's right.
Well, thank you, beautiful Joe. I hope we can connect with you again. Thank you, everyone, for listening, tuning in, and I will be with you next week.